Welcome to the Soul Seeker podcast. I'm your host, Sam Kabert. I started this pod back in 2019 when I was taking my first steps on the path of remembering. And at the time, the tagline for the show was a journey of self-discovery. A year later, it became a journey of remembering. Yet, what I know now is back then, I was still seeking. And what I've come to know now is that it's the journey of seeking that brings us the silent, slow stillness of acceptance. And therein lies our own innate wisdom. It's my mission now to eradicate the glorification of hustle culture, as it was my drive in entrepreneurship that led to a greater whole, and that's because I was outsourcing my sovereignty rather than looking within. So let this be your invitation to take a deep breath in and remember that at any time we can shift our thoughts and our feelings to create the outer world in which we wish to live. Soul Seekers, it's time to grow. Let's go. What is up, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seeker podcast. I am your host, as always, Sam Kabert, and in this episode, we are sitting down with Lorilee Binstock. Now, Lorilee has such a amazing, incredible, and inspiring story. I feel so grateful to have connected with her over this past year. We've had a few collaborations, and one of which is through her magazine called Authentic Insider. She's also got a podcast called A Trauma Survivor Thrivers podcast, which is an award-winning podcast. And in this episode, she's going deep. She's really letting herself be seen and sharing her challenges in allowing a repressed memory or memories coming through in her adult life of being sexually abused as a child. So that's what we're going to be talking about in this episode. And as always, in the Soul Seeker podcast, we aren't holding back. We're going deep. And the reason why we do this is because when we share these stories, it gives ourselves to not only alchemize them, whether it's through the share or the lessons that we've learned, but it's to help people listening that might be like, hey, I've experienced that too, and I haven't figured out a way through, or maybe I have figured out a way through, but it's just nice it feels, I don't want to say validating, but it's encouraging to see other people on a similar journey, and you can see yourself in others, because after all, we are all just one anyways. So with that, I hope you enjoy this episode. This is a very heartfelt episode, and I would definitely love to have Lorilee back on the podcast to talk more. And one of the things we talk about a lot here too is how assisted psychedelic therapy, and not just like in the clinic type psychedelic therapy, but also healing ceremonies with plant and earth medicines such as Bufo has been so crucial for her to overcome her complex PTSD. So with that, I hope you guys enjoy this episode. If you're new to the Soul Seeker podcast, please consider leaving a rating or review. It helps other people to discover the show as well. And I started this podcast after my first dance with ayahuasca back in 2019 as my way to give back to humanity and just connect with like-minded people. And really what my true aim with the Soul Seeker show, what the aim is to help to raise the collective consciousness from this fallen state. So if that resonates with you, one easy way you can play a role in that is just by leaving a rating or review. It helps other people to discover the podcast as well. And if you want to go deeper with me, you can always join our free Breath Club community. If you're someone that feels isolated, you feel alone, or you just want the tools to move forward in this challenging human experience, then what are you waiting for? Definitely join the free Breath Club. Not only is it an online community with a weekly free breathwork session, but I'm also providing coaching in the container as well. It's all free. So if that calls to you, you can go to the show notes to find how to join the Breath Club. Other than that, enjoy this episode with Lorilee. What is up, Soul Seekers, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seeker podcast. We are going to do what we always do and start with 3 breaths. So, Lorilee, for you, for me, for listeners, for everyone that is out there in listening land, I would invite you to close your eyes if you are in a space where it's comfortable to. But if you're driving or running or doing anything like that, you can breathe with us. You don't have to close your eyes. Otherwise, now would be a good time to just shift from the outer world into our inner landscape, sitting straight up, feeling your feet on the floor, and through the nose, inhaling all the way up, sipping in a bit more air at the top. Audible sigh, let it go. Another big, slow, nourishing inhale, letting the belly expand, bringing that breath all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. And slowly sighing it out. Last one yet, letting the belly expand as you inhale through the nose all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. Hold, roll up the eyes. And audible sigh. Letting the breath return to its natural state, rhythm. And here we are.
Oh, that was nice.
Always nice, right? Always is. Lorilee Binstock calling in from Washington, D.C. I don't know why I thought Colorado earlier, but it is so awesome to have you here on the podcast. We got connected, I think, through LinkedIn a while ago, and I did a few articles for your magazine, Authentic Insider. You were gracious enough to have me on your podcast, a trauma survivor thriver, and you are also a top 40 Under 40 podcast host and a former, was it anchor at a news station?
I was a former morning show anchor and
I
producer.
can see it now. I can see
Can
it
you?
now.
Can
Yeah.
you? It was in my calling. I don't maybe it was the trauma that the my mental health suffered from it, and I don't it's because I wasn't seeking out any type of healing back then. And I was like, "Oh, this isn't for me." But
Mm.
yeah, no, it was not it wasn't the time for me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought that up. Not that you have trauma, but the thing is, I think we kind of joked about it before we hit record. Like we all have trauma, and to compare your trauma is a losing battle. Like
Mhm.
for some people being like, I don't have trauma, that minimizes it, and then for others, getting stuck in victim mentality of identifying as a traumatized person. Since we just started here, let's go there. Like, talk to us what that looked like when you were in your anchor days and in news
Oh
and when you were
gosh.
kind of disassociating, and walk us through like the evolution of that, if you will.
Well, I mean, it's not a pretty healthy lifestyle working as a news anchor, especially for a morning show, because I actually worked. I would go into the newsroom at 10 at night, and I would leave at 9 in the morning, the earliest. And I hosted a live 2-hour show, and I had a mental break where I was like, I couldn't do this anymore. I didn't, I was the youngest anchor there. I felt very, I felt very just disrespected a lot. I just felt like I got the talk from my co-anchor who'd be like, I've been on this earth longer than you. And and I was I felt very like I wasn't good enough constantly. And that kind of just ate at me. And just being on live television, that was really hard. And so I actually, I had a mental break. I attempted suicide. I took a bunch of sleeping pills that a doctor gave me so I can get some sleep because I wasn't sleeping. Sleeping during the day is very difficult if you're not really used to it. And so I just never slept. And that on top of, you know, a not so great mental health, it really destroyed me. And so I don't know how I ended up in the ER. I still don't know who brought me there. But I woke up in a psych ward the next day, and it was really traumatizing just that happening. Um, the local station was on. I don't know. Going back, I've been to another, in 2020, I went to a mental health residential treatment center, and they didn't let you watch TV there, right? TV was on, the local news was on, and commercials with me on it. It was very traumatic. It was very
Wow.
traumatic to see that, and other people like, oh, you're that person. But they diagnosed me with bipolar disorder. And that was 10 years, 15 years ago, and they didn't diagnose people with PTSD, not
Wow.
non-veterans, right? I was just some person, some woman who came in, and they're like, you're bipolar. We're going to put you on lithium, and we're going to put you on antipsychotics. And that just made things so much worse. And antipsychotics, they were like, oh yeah, the side effects are, losing your train of thought. And so I remember going back to, luckily my news director let me come back on because I just didn't show up. And that was like, I don't even know what happened there. They found somebody from like the evening show to do the morning show. And when I went back, it just got worse because I was just sitting on live television, would forget what I would say, and then I would cry. Like it was just really terrible. So, anyways, I just, once my contract was up, I was like, I can't be here any longer. I need to find something else to do. And, this was 2009, so finding a job was going to be difficult. So,
Mhm.
it took me 6 months to find a job in PR in Washington, D.C. And, that was also a toxic environment. So it things just felt like it was getting worse for me. And then, once I got pregnant with my first child, I quit my job, and I kind of stayed home with them. But even that was difficult. Being a mom is not easy. And so I had my second child, and then eventually I had my most recent suicide attempt. And you know, I told my husband after that had happened that, I was sexually abused by my father. And he was like, not, he was shocked, but he wasn't surprised, which I was very surprised about. And so, anyways, we decided to put me in a treatment facility, and a residential treatment facility where I learned a lot about trauma that I didn't know about previously. And yeah, it really saved my life. But it wasn't until after, when I was like, people don't know about somatic experiencing. Like, I've never heard of that before. No, I've never heard of revisioning and all of these different holistic ways of healing trauma. And so I wanted to talk about it and interview people. And, I thought starting a podcast would help. And I started the podcast. And then I happened to invite somebody on who knew about psychedelics, but they didn't want to talk about their psychedelic journey on the show. So I got in touch with her practitioner, and then I started working with them. And then, my life transformed from that
Mhm.
moment. And it was MDMA was my first psychedelic experience
Amazing.
therapeutically.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I always say like psychedelic therapy and plant and earth medicine ceremonies like for healing. But that's kind of like a distinction I make. Anyways, though, not to get into that quite yet. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much for sharing your vulnerability, your experiences. And I think what's coming up for me is the sexual abuse from your father. I know that's super deep, and we're gonna go there for a moment here at least. But was that something that you carried with you your whole life, or did it resurface at some point?
It was actually something that had happened when I was around 8. I think I believe it ended around like when I was 12. Um, and from there, I really suppressed it because I remember when I was 16 and I ate mushrooms with some of my friends, and I specifically remember the memories coming up from
Mm,
that. I think I
wow.
had completely forgot about it, but I was 16 years old. I was with friends, and this is the only thing that was showing up for me. And I was like, "Oh my God, I think I don't know how to stop this. It's not going away. And, that was my first thought was, I need to kill myself. Like I need to jump out this window because I cannot see this. I don't want to see this. And, looking back, knowing what I know about psychedelics is it shows you the hard things that you need to heal and need to work through. If I wish I knew that back then, I wish I knew that, okay, this is telling me I need to tell somebody about this. I had no idea, but luckily I was interrupted by a friend who was like, "Oh, let's go outside." And, so luckily that plan was thwarted, but that really made me think, 25 years later, I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna maybe that's exactly what, psychedelics, that was what it was supposed to do. I was supposed to find healing in those mushrooms, and I was supposed to probably talk to somebody about it. And I think about it all the time, like, what if I did talk to somebody about it? Like, can you imagine if I jump started my healing at like
Mhm.
16 versus, like in my late 30s? It's hard to think about. Um,
Well, can I offer a reframe?
yes, please.
This is where it's like, gets into esotericism and spirituality and, spiritually bypassing. But I do believe everything happens for you in the exact time that it's supposed to and meant to, and
Hmm.
when we start to go down those rabbit holes, we're kind of like in resistance. Like what I talked about with the show when I first did ayahuasca, very similar to you. I was like, I want to start a podcast and talk with other people about experiences with spirituality. And for anyone listening that's like newer in the path and you felt like an inclination to get into content creation, I think we both would urge you to do so.
Hmm.
Forget about like signing up for courses or coaching or, just becoming a student of searching everything. Like you get to interview amazing people and hear firsthand experiences,
Hmm.
just everyday people like ourselves, but also like I've had Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor on, who was one of Time's most influential people back in 2008, amazing people. So all of this to say, like, I know for myself, like when I get stuck in those thoughts of like, what could have I done differently? It's like I don't want to spiritually bypass and be like, oh, all is light and love and everything happens like exactly how it's supposed to, that
Right.
doesn't really resonate. But what does resonate is like, okay, maybe I'll play that out. Like in your scenario, not to project, but you already mentioned like back then when you were diagnosed with bipolar. PTSD was more for veterans and reserve. So I know from people in my life, like even I'm not sure. I know we're similar age, but probably even before you were 16, like 10 years before that, people voiced up things and they are put in a psych ward, or like Andrew,
That's
what's it?
true.
Yeah, Paul Levy, the author of Dispelling Wetiko, incredible book. He talks about in the 70s or 80s how he basically had a spiritual awakening experience and they put him in a psych ward. And he said the only thing that kept him sane was knowing that he was sane, everyone else was crazy, right? But,
Yeah.
if we look at it like, how my life would have been different. It's like this, I mentioned soul seeking too. Now it's like soul acceptance, being like, okay, but this is what it is now. And if I were to play it out, the other scenario, maybe this would have actually been worse for me. Maybe it was protecting me. And maybe that's what led to all those other things.
That's right.
So, anyways, though, gets into like soul contracts, karma, all the really fun
Hmm.
things that I love to talk about. Bipolar is an interesting one to me. I've done a deep dive of bipolar over the past year or two with some guests and my own research and things like that. But it's weird because like someone can say you are or have or whatever bipolar, but like there's not really any like scientific evidence to back it up. It's just like, hey, you are this thing, so we're going to put
Right.
you on that thing, which is why there's so many misdiagnoses, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was
So
my story.
exactly. And it's really PTSD. So coming back kind of full circle now, when you were able to accept this and bring it to the surface and tell your husband, like it sounds like at that point in life, after seeing it at 16 years old, it never really went away. It was always kind of lingering. You knew it was there, but you kind of just like repressed it a little bit. Is that kind of,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I didn't want to think about it.
yeah, who would, right?
Right.
Rightfully so. Yeah. So you told your husband that kind of made it real, and then you took some steps forward. Not speaking, well, let's go here with psychedelics. So
Okay.
yeah, this is an important thing for us to talk about. Like, there's recreational use of psychedelics. I did mushrooms a lot in high school and college as well, and you never know what's going to come up, right? So, not really the best idea if you're like new and exploring consciousness. Then
Right.
there's psychedelic therapy, working with, sometimes a therapist, but maybe sometimes not a therapist. But I think of that as more like a clinical or even office type setting, ketamine, MDMA, things like that. Plant and earth medicine ceremonies like the toad, ayahuasca, or even mushroom ceremonies. But making that decision to go to psychedelics for healing, like what did that personally look like for you to really be like, is this right for me and how am I going to approach it? I know you mentioned you had the person on the podcast, but once you spoke to their facilitator, was it just like, I'm all in?
Oh, I was all in. Well, I was thinking, I also did LSD as a kid and I loved it. I was like, oh, LSD is amazing. Maybe I'll find, psychedelic healing through LSD. And my therapist was like, the trauma from the sexual abuse seems a little deeper and maybe kind of traumatic, kind of starting out. I feel like she wanted fires to be put out before I went the direction of mushrooms or LSD. And so she's like, let's try MDMA. Kind of go in there a little easily. It lowers your fear, um, that part of your brain that produces the anxiety and fear. And so I was like, okay, I sure, let's try it. I was totally fine with it. And but that experience really made me see, and I'm so glad she convinced me to do it because I was ready for the LSD. I was like, I want to go like hardcore in here. And but that first experience, I saw my father as a child and I literally saw his abuse and his trauma. And it was I really looked at my father with so much compassion and understanding. And I think that from that day, my anger, I was a person who would lose their temper all the time. I was, especially in the newsroom, like if you see that typical person yelling and screaming and yelling fuck all the time when like, oh, the printer's jammed, it's like that was me. I was the person with road rage. I was just a very angry person. Um, and once I found compassion for my father, and I felt like that released a ton of anger that I was holding in. Um, and that really, moving forward, that really changed. So I was doing internal family systems therapy at the same time. And, what I also discovered in my integration was that the day my father stopped abusing me was the day that I completely went batshit crazy when he came in my room and I just started screaming and throwing things and just breaking stuff. And he completely, like, he was so scared, he left my room. Not only that, and within the week, he like moved out of the country. I think he thought I was like this ticking time bomb who was going to tell somebody what had happened. And when I when I went through my IFS therapy and integration, they were like, that was your anger. Your anger comes out because as soon as you feel fear, your anger will come out to protect you because it knows it's protected you so well before in the past. And so from that MDMA integration experience, I was able to let go of that anger. and be a little bit more peaceful. I'm not saying my anger doesn't come out, but it doesn't come out nearly as frequently as it had in the past.
Yeah, I want to mention Gestalt therapy, and I'm just going to say that now so I don't forget, and hopefully you remind me if I do forget. But that's such a beautiful share, and thank you for that because this is compassion when our heart opens and we can start to see ourselves from another person's lens. And I mean, think of the worst thing that could happen in your life. That's right up there. Your experience of being abused by your father. I mean, it's your father in your own
Right.
home too, right? So talk about like not being able to trust and worthiness and all kinds of shame, everything coming up and just is this normal? And then seeing like, oh
Hmm.
wow, this is his perspective. And another saying that gets tossed around and can be borderline spiritually bypassing, but people are doing the best they can with the tools they have in the given circumstance in the given moment, right?
Right.
And we can easily say these things, but what psychedelics do in your experience that you're sharing with us is help us to see from their lens. And from an integration point of view, I'll share with you, Lorilee, like, and listeners, one of the best practices for me is on a daily basis. And I don't do this as much as I did about a year or two ago when I was in the thick of it, but seeing people as a reflection of myself and specifically like not just be like, oh, you're just like a mirror of me, like you are me, I am you, we're all one, like whatever. It's like, no, if there's something that's coming up in this conversation, it's coming up for a reason. It's probably something I should look at for myself,
Hmm.
especially if it's a trigger point. And when we do a practice like this, it helps to build more compassion, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, Gestalt therapy. So, have you heard of Gestalt therapy?
No, I have not.
So I did a NLP neuro-linguistic master practitioner training. It was like 2 weeks long every single day from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And one of the things we were trained in is MER, mental emotional release. It knocks out PTSD, like anxiety,
Hmm.
depression, all kinds of different things, including PTSD and phobias as well. And it utilizes Gestalt therapy. And the idea is like the first time we experience something, let's just say shame, for example. Let's say in this sample, it's when you're 3 years old, the first time you ever experience shame. Well, you don't consciously need to know that you experience that because your subconscious is taking care of that for us. Thank you,
Hmm.
subconscious, right? But then when we experience shame as an adult, we go straight back to that first experience of experiencing shame. So by utilizing Gestalt therapy through MER and timeline therapy, basically like a game of dominoes, we're knocking out that first time you experience it so that
Yeah.
it shoves everything down. To your point, you were rewiring the neural pathways in the psychedelic experience, essentially doing that so that now when you experience anger, it's like, yeah, I'm a normal person. I still experience anger from time to time, but that anger isn't rage and I'm able to respond to it versus react to it. So
Yeah.
pretty powerful stuff there.
Wow, that's so powerful. Yeah, that kind of also reminds me of, IFS therapy a little bit.
Yeah,
Kind of
IFS has
getting
been
there.
so huge. Do you like give your parts a name and kind of like speak with them as they come up? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I can describe what they look like, and they don't look like sometimes they look like an object. Sometimes they look, my rage showed up as fire.
If you're looking for a powerful and transformative experience for your next event, consider bringing in Sam Kabert as a keynote speaker. Sam's message of soul life balance and his expertise in mental health and mindfulness resonate deeply with audiences. He not only inspires with his story, but also offers practical tools like breathwork to help attendees regulate their emotions and reconnect with themselves. You can even have Sam lead a guided breathwork journey, creating a truly unforgettable experience. To learn more or book Sam for your event, check out the link in the show notes to book a call with Sam now.
Your rage shows up as fire, you mentioned.
Yeah.
So you have kids. How old are your kids now?
10 and 7.
Have you watched Inside Out with them?
Yes. Yes, and maybe that's why, because I love Inside Out and
Yeah.
they love it too. And maybe whenever I just imagined myself like screaming at my father, I was just this ball of fire, just ready to burn the fucking house down.
Right. And it's kind of like that Kali energy too, right? Are you familiar with
Yeah.
the goddess Kali? Yeah, or Shakti, and we could get into Kundalini. So I want to talk about trauma and just kind of like identifying with trauma. Like, where are you at now with it? Do you say like, hey, I understand it's complex PTSD, but do you say like, I am someone who's traumatized. I experienced traumatized things. I like, where are you at with this relationship to trauma now?
I constantly say that I'm healing. What realize is I'm very aware when I get reactive. I'm very aware. And sometimes I'm like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I know I'm not supposed to do. Um, and sometimes I can, calm myself down. I could feel my brain rewiring. And then other times I just give in to it and I can be explosive depending on, if I feel like I'm not being heard, if I feel like I'm being ignored, it can, you know, and not necessarily with my kids, but like, there have been times where I'm like, look at me. You are, like talking to like a stranger who is like completely like I have bad road rage. There was this small street, and this guy had his huge truck. And I was like, okay, is this guy going to reverse or he's just parking right in the middle of the street? Because this is a one-way street and I'm just gonna have to reverse out of here. Um, and then I like honked my horn and tried to get his attention, like, are you moving? And he literally just turned his head and would not look at me. And that triggered something in me. And I'm like, I just started like screaming obscenities out of my car. And then I was like, okay, I have to pick up my children. So I threw my car in reverse. So there are moments like that where I'm like, okay, that wasn't proper behavior. That was me being extremely reactive. But then there are other times where my kids are doing something that I feel like I could easily like lose my shit about. But then I'm like, okay, they just need a hug. And like that wouldn't be what I would do like 5 years ago. And I feel like my daughter who's older, I feel like I'm still trying to work with her and kind of undo some of the trauma that she probably experienced from me. But my son is very like, he has breathing techniques. He has gone through like he's grown up knowing me as just a person who's constantly healing and trying to do better. And I think my daughter is, maybe she's also getting to an age, she's 10, she's getting to this age where it's a little challenging hormonally. So I'm just hoping that like I can keep doing the right thing and not being as reactive.
Yeah, totally. So with like trauma then, would you say that when you have these like trigger responses, are you saying that's like as a result of having PTSD then?
I would think I think it is from some of the trauma, some of the little T traumas, the
Mhm.
neglect, the not being heard. I think that kind of comes out because I knew as a child the only way I did get heard was if I would my reaction would be to yell and to be loud, and not necessarily nice about it. And so that's when I would get people's attention, get my parents' attention, um, or and so I feel myself getting there. But I think what the psychedelics have done, my healing and everything, I have gotten to this point where I could actually realize it. I'm aware of it. And so it's just a matter of still staying on that route of like, it's like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, maybe 1 step back now. But it's a constant journey.
Yeah, totally. What about breath work? Have you gotten into breath work at all?
Yeah. Well, when I was in treatment at in Arizona, I did a lot of breath work and I didn't realize and they actually hooked me up to one of those a biofeedback machines. So whenever I did box breathing, it was crazy how all my stress level and everything would just go down. And I was seeing it in real time what was happening when I was doing the breathing. And so it's extremely effective for me now. Um, it's funny because before I went into treatment and I actually saw that, I was just like, oh, just breathe, just breathe. But it
Totally.
wasn't something I was purposefully or intentionally doing to help me calm down. But now I do, and feels so good. Just like when you did at the beginning of your show.
Yeah, yeah, it's simple little practice like that for sure. When I did the articles for your magazine Authentic Insider, did I do one on the breath process?
You
Do you?
did.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah.
that
That's
has
great.
been so instrumental to me, and it becomes like autopilot for me where it's like, oh, a trigger response right now or whatever it is. Okay, let me breathe to slow down, relax to feel, energy to reveal what's coming up. I'm going to do my shadow work. Okay, I don't want to see that. So the fourth step, accept to surrender. I got to surrender to it.
Mm.
Okay, I've accepted it. Now I know that my body processes emotions in 90 seconds. So now I'm going to transmute it into empowering belief. And then what habits am I going to integrate? Like, honestly, I tell people all the time, these 6 steps, it's a lot. So just remember, breathe, feel, think, like breathe when that trigger comes up, allow yourself to slow down and shift into rest and digest. Allow yourself to feel what's coming up and then think intentionally as you move forward from there. And just the more you do that, you start to reprogram your subconscious mind. So like when those different scenarios come up, it just kind of happens automatically,
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
what's funny about the breath process is that came from when my life imploded a
Mm.
couple of years ago. But the year or two before that, I got T-boned by a tractor, believe it or not.
Oh my God.
Yeah, kind of funny. Being in a farm town and going 30, maybe 40 miles an hour, and a tractor coming on the side of the road. Of course, I saw it, but I didn't think it would actually like come out, right? So it smashed in my whole car. My dog was in the
Oh.
back seat in her crate. He smashed right into where my dog was. She was completely fine. She was
Oh
fine, thank
gosh.
God. But I get out, and it was just this out of body experience. And I remember knowing it was totally smashed in. And I looked and I saw the whole thing was caved in. I saw my dog, and she's such a trooper. But I remember
Oh.
hearing the thought, oh, you're supposed to say, what the fuck? So I go, what the fuck? And then I was like, no, that's not right. And immediately I was just like calm, but it was like that old programming of being like, oh, I'm supposed to be angry. But it was
Yeah.
it was really like where the breath process was born was just like reflecting, what have I been doing recently to help process my triggers and be like, oh, this is what I've been doing. Um,
Mm.
so that's been so impactful for me. And like you mentioned, IFS, but what else besides the things that you've mentioned, what else has helped you to process complex PTSD?
Well, I did a mushroom journey not long after that with my therapist. And it was interesting. I was going through all of the emotions that exists. Like I was crying hysterically, I was laughing hysterically. I had so much anxiety, I thought I was going to vomit. Like it was just so it was like and it would just cycle. It was like I don't it felt like it was cycling for like 20 minutes. My therapist eventually said, "No, that was only like a few minutes." But she said that she noticed that when after like a few cycles of me crying, laughing and severe anxiety, she said out of nowhere I just started box breathing. Just
Mm.
and then all of a sudden it just went away. And I was like, she was like, and I just saw you just box breathing, and then I could see your body was so tense, and then it just relaxed. And I was like, that's kind of how I react whenever I feel stressed or overwhelmed. The box breathing has always helped me. But along with that, and then for the longest time, that's just how I typically go there. However, if I'm like in a moment where I'm rushed and I'm like that, it never comes out. But I did, when I was in residential treatment, I learned about somatic experiencing, and that was really great for me. And I talked to you about this on my podcast. I did the 5-MeO DMT with a practitioner, and what I realized, you could easily be scared doing 5-MeO DMT because
Oh
I,
yeah.
I was convulsing and I was like, oh my gosh, what is that? Luckily, I kind of knew. I feel like the somatic experiencing kind of helped me. It's like that whole idea that, Paul Levine, was that it?
Peter
Waking the
Levine.
Tiger. Peter Levine. Ugh, Peter Levine.
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
right. Waking the Tiger. And that's what I was told to read that book when I was in therapy. And the whole idea of like animals, they shake the trauma out of them. And I felt, my first 5-MeO session, I was just convulsing, but I felt so much weight. Once it was done, the weight felt lifted. Like I didn't feel so weighted down. And I felt that that was the trauma just shaking uncontrollably out of my body. And so,
That's it.
yeah, it was amazing. I felt
Yeah.
so good after that. I mean, it was really scary during it. And not in the scary sense like, oh my God, what's happening? I kind of knew what was happening, but I can easily see if someone had no idea what was happening, how that could be very scary.
Yeah, five EMEO is a big one. I mean, just even talking about it intimidates me. I've been a part of over 1,000 ceremonies, probably like 15 of my own, and just assisting in other people's healings over the years. So I'm very familiar with that medicine. But I mean, that medicine is just no joke. It is intense, and I've been out of the ceremony space for maybe like 7 months. And I used to be in the space like at least once a month for a few days at a time.
Oh, wow.
So that's not as much part of my life, but even back then when it was like every month and for a few days, if I was out for a couple of weeks even and just getting back in, it would be like, oh, like it would take a moment to like settle in because it's
Hmm.
intense. Like you mentioned, it's no joke. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of like you. I convulse. I vibrate. My body vibrates, and my teeth chatter, and all those type
Yeah.
of things. Yeah.
Yep. That happened to me.
You sat with that one a couple of times now, then, or?
Yeah, actually, after I talked to you for my podcast, I did another session, and it was really funny because I was having these the couple weeks prior, I was having this like pain that was shooting from my elbow to my fingers. And so if my arm was bent, it would go numb. And so I would like always like I would keep my arm straight and I would, work out and I'd go to the gym and then I'd be running on the treadmill. I would go to Orange Theory and I would have to run with my right arm straight. And my friend who is a PT was like, "Why are you running with your arm straight?" And I was like, "Oh, it's just." I told her what had happened and she was like, okay, that's like your back, your neck, that's affecting that. And I was like, okay. I was like, that's probably stress. And so when I went into the treatment, the 5-MeO, this my right arm just started. I could feel where that my PT was talking, where all of that pain was, and I felt it kind of ball up and then shoot out my arm, ball up, and like
Whoa.
I was just this arm was convulsing, and it was crazy because then after that, I haven't had that feeling. Like it
Amazing.
hasn't gone numb. It hasn't like I've been fine. And it's been like I feel like 5-MeO has been more physically, like the physical
Mhm.
trauma has been released more so than mentally. I don't know. Maybe mentally, yes, it's helped too, but I've really felt the physical change in my body, just lighter and able to move easier.
Yeah, I'm so glad you got to experience that. That is such a cool experience. And you're right. 5-MeO is super physical. It's somatic experiencing, like you mentioned. And there's nothing quite like it because the default mode network goes offline and like our personification, our ego self, it goes
Mm.
offline. Then there's none of this experiencing that keeps us stuck. Like for me, I've had some pain in my body that I've gone to ayahuasca ceremonies for being like, I need to get to the bottom of this. Then I'm just in pain all night, no matter how much breath work or anything else that I'm doing. Whereas with like 5-MeO, the experiencer, the witness isn't there to see it. So the body can just release itself, just like you were saying, like
Mm.
animals in the wild, right? And that's that we say like we're holding this backpack full of emotions, or emotions are energy in motion. Oh, we can process
Hmm.
them in 90 seconds, but really, like, it takes a lot to release it, and 5-MeO is absolutely an amazing way to release all of that. And then it becomes comes to integration work, to your point about the mind body connection, which I gotta mention, it's so nice having a PT friend, right?
Yeah, it really is.
I was just talking to my friend Shan. She wrote the forward to my last book. She's a PT. I was just talking with her a couple days ago and be like, "Hey, I got this clicking going on my knee," you know. But anyways, yeah, it's all really good stuff. So in the integration side of 5-MeO, because it leaves you like W2TF, we kind of gotta catch up. And I have this theory that what's going on is it's giving you a Kundalini awakening. And the
Mhm.
story about Kundalini is like Shakti is making her way up to her lover Shiva in the third eye. She sits at the root chakra and then she burns through all the impurities and distortions and blockages in the lower three chakras. And then once that happens, the heart gets activated, then the other three on top come online. So what Bufo is doing is just like giving us that fast pass that we didn't really earn. So then in the
Yeah.
integration, all the things come up from the lower three chakras, and it's like, okay, now we gotta go backwards and do our work.
Wow, yeah. No, I love that theory. I think that's excellent. And yes, I sometimes I'm like, maybe, psychedelics can be it's a hack, right? For your
Hmm.
mental health. And I think it's the best hack ever because it takes so much time. It takes so much of your life to heal from trauma. And I feel like psychedelics really kind of gets you to that place very quickly.
If you're looking for a powerful and transformative experience for your next event, consider bringing in Sam Kabert as a keynote speaker. Sam's message of soul life balance and his expertise in mental health and mindfulness resonate deeply with audiences. He not only inspires with his story, but also offers practical tools like breathwork to help attendees regulate their emotions and reconnect with themselves. You can even have Sam lead a guided breathwork journey, creating a truly unforgettable experience. To learn more or book Sam for your event, check out the link in the show notes to book a call with Sam now.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And for you now, like having done all these different therapies with psychedelics and going to the top of the totem pole, if you will, with Bufo, like where are you at now with your journey? I know you're always evolving and healing, but like with your podcast, Trauma Survivor Thriver, are you learning a lot of different modalities from your guests and things like that?
Oh my gosh, there's so many modalities that I did not know existed.
Yeah.
So many. And it's amazing. I'm just learning so much. And, I feel like the thread through all of my guests is just the awareness, this learning about yourself and really knowing how to not be as reactive. And by that is learning a lot more about yourself. And I think that's been pretty powerful and a great reminder every time.
Yeah, that mirror work, right? Where's that
Yes.
in me? Yeah, it's a good one. Has there been any recent episodes that really stand out for you?
I really loved your episode.
Oh, well, thank
I
you.
really did. I also did. I just last week I released an episode with a rabbi who is doing work with people in Israel, um, psychedelic work. But that's that. Before the war started, he sat with Palestinians and Israelis, and um, they realized that they had so much more in common than they didn't. I
Wow.
thought that was really powerful. And just his energy is really amazing, and what he wants to do. I don't know. I feel like I really love having my guests on, like, just the guests are amazing, and I just love learning new things.
Yeah, I feel the same way, and I'm gonna go back and listen to that episode with the rabbi. One, because I'm Jewish, I've never really been religious and always like kind of anti-religious and very
Mm,
spiritual now. But Judaism is definitely like a culture. So definitely
hmm.
fascinated by that. But I think one of the things I'm really passionate about right now is bringing communities together. So that does
Hmm.
sound so fascinating, and it's an interesting time because we feel more divided than ever. I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of things going on, and I just was telling you I did a brand new presentation before we hit record on this, and I brought in Hakalau. Have you heard the term Hakalau?
I know.
Yeah, I
I'm
learned about
curious.
this in my NLP training. It's a Hawaiian term, and it basically is a way to look through your eyes with your peripheral vision. So instead of just looking forward, we're looking out to the sides and engaging our
Mm,
peripheral, and that's getting into Hakalau, and that helps us get into flow states and relaxation, and it helps with cognitive function in the brain. It starts to shut down the prefrontal cortex, get into that what's the term? Transient hypofrontality, which is what gets us
mm,
into flow states for science behind it. But the reason why I bring that up is on that slide, I wrote expand your view. And it's not just about expanding your view with your eyes and getting into Hakalau and
like
flow states.
visually.
Yeah, it's like be open and be curious what other people like.
Yes.
So often we're just trying to say someone's wrong and my belief systems are right. And it's like if you want to actually invoke change and have better relationships, whether it's family or friends or just coworkers or colleagues or different people that have different viewpoints, you have to try to understand them. You can't be so
Right.
fixated in your mindset, you know? So,
No, I believe that 100%. I
right.
absolutely agree with that.
Yeah. So there's another thing I saw in your bio that I didn't know. You're a filmmaker?
Well, yes, I'm working on trying to raise money for this documentary called Our Own Personal Realities, kind of like looking at a micro scale, like if each individual healed their own trauma, what would that do for community? What would that do worldwide? How would that work with conflict? And, the rabbi has been very gracious in talking to me about how that's, how that would do. I've talked to, you know, um, Heroic Hearts. I don't know if you know about Heroic Hearts, but it's
No, I don't.
oh gosh. Um, oh, what's his name? Anyway, well, basically veterans that they send overseas to, it's a nonprofit that they send veterans overseas to receive treatment for psychedelics. So it's basically about psychedelics and how psychedelics, it's the hack, right? It's the mental hack that we talked about. And so that's kind of where it's going. Like, micro individually, community, how that can help with like hate and racism and conflict and war and, just kind of just zooming out and seeing how
Oh, that's
that can
beautiful.
help. So, yes, that's what I'm currently working on right now.
Yeah, we're
So,
very similar. Lots of projects, right?
so many. I can't
Yeah.
even, I don't know what to do.
I started a nonprofit in December a few months ago at the time of this recording, and now I'm like, oh, like everyone's like, you don't understand. And I'm like, now I understand like how hard it is to manage a nonprofit. And I thought like, oh, because I'm serving first responders and vets for like
Amazing.
PTSD, basically workshops like in person and online support. But right now everything's just coming out of my pocket because I didn't realize how hard it would be to get grant money. So I don't know the process for filmmaking, but I understand raising money and whatnot. Your
That's
film
the worst
sounds
part.
absolutely incredible. It is. It's challenging for sure. Well, anyways, Lorilee, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the show. And it's great to see you and chat with you. And for everyone listening, go to the show notes and click her podcast and check it out. You guys are going to dig it. Also, check out her website so you can get connected with the Authentic Insider. If anything that Lorilee is talking about, or just like her tone and energy is resonating with you, definitely connect with her. You won't be sorry you did. So, Lorilee, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
No,
Thank you.
thank you. I'm so honored to have come on your podcast. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll have to do it again too, because I just asked you about the documentary at the end, and now that I know what it is, I'm like, oh, we could do a whole episode just about that, you know?
Yes, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, it'd be fun. So as it gets closer, we'll definitely unpack that. And everyone, have a great day, and thanks so much, Lorilee.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for listening to this episode to the very end. I hope you really enjoyed this one just as much as I did. It's such a pleasure to connect with Lorilee, and I think you can feel in her energy just how authentic of a person she is. So I encourage you to go to the show notes, connect with Lorilee, and of course, join our free breath club. If you're enjoying these shows and you're getting value out about them. And especially if you're someone that wants to learn more about how to regain control of your nervous system through breath work, then what are you waiting for? Definitely join us in the Breath Club. Other than that, I will see you in the next episode of the Soul Seeker Podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the very end. I hope you dug this podcast just as much as I enjoyed it. If you got anything at all, please, if you could just do me a favor and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast, it helps the show grow. So thank you for considering to leave a review. If you want to go deeper with Soltara or Elan, you can find the links to connect with them in the show notes. And if you want to work with me, the best way to work with me, the easiest way to work with me is the free way, and that's by joining the Breath Club. The link to the Breath Club is in the show notes. And also know that I'm available for one-on-one support, that is coaching and guidance, as well as keynotes and breathwork journeys for conferences and events. Thank you so much, and I will see you on the next episode of The Soul Seeker.